Well, it's day 165 of the Madlanga Commission. Welcome back to the Bridget Mabandla Justice College. And of course, as always, during this segment, we bring you some analysis of what we've heard at the last sitting of the Madlanga Commission, which would, of course, have been on Friday. And we saw Fadiel Adams, the leader of the National Coloured Congress, he actually took charge of the morning session. And then in the afternoon, we heard from Lieutenant Colonel Cedric Nkabinde of the Hawks, and of course we will unpack some of what the Commission heard here on Friday. And I'm joined to help us do that by Mike Bolhuis, who's of course a specialist security analyst here for us. Mike, good morning. Thanks so much for coming through. So again, Fadiel Adams, several days on the witness stand here at the Commission giving evidence, and it was a bit of a torrid time for him. Some contradictions, had to admit at some point that perhaps his memory was a bit fuzzy in terms of some of the details.
Yeah, it's interesting how a person that's in a situation where there's extreme confrontation, you're under the eyes of the public, you're a politician, you're all that, and then your memory fails or your computer doesn't work. That doesn't fly. So it's once again our opinion that I'm sure that there's much more but won't be divulged, and I'm sure there will be what we call a deduction of whether this person is truthful or not. Once again, if a person lies once, that's what will be remembered. And my advice to all these gentlemen, which has now been identified, many of them as criminals, is to give their full cooperation and just once and for all be honest and transparent and say what they mean and mean what they say.
So if we look at some of the granular detail of Fadiel Adams's testimony, there was, for example, that Section 27 referral affidavit that was made to IDAC. And we heard from Advocate Drew Ramsamy, where she questioned whether the affidavit, the Section 27 referral that was flighted here at the Commission was in fact the same one that she had knowledge of. And Fadiel Adams essentially saying that he's inclined to agree with her version of events because he mentions that the forklift, for example, that matter is one that he wanted to raise with IDAC, and that didn't find expression in that particular referral. So again, what happened? And it would seem as though the evidence may have been tampered with.
The only way to really make the penny drop where truth surfaces is by a forensic polygraphing. If we were to do the extension of the Madlanga Commission, we would say to every person that has given a affidavit, here's the catch-21 questions. We ask you and to see if it's truthful. If you refuse, isn't that a red flag? If you do something and you want to really present yourself with facts, with an affidavit, wouldn't you want to go the extra convincing mile and state, listen, here I am, polygraph me. And do you have witnesses and other forms of evidence to sustain that? But we don't see this here, and this is why there's a lot of yin and yang. There's a lot of stories and a lot of conflicting stories, and which is a huge concern.
Speaking of that, forensic polygraphing, of course, this is a fact-finding mission. It's an inquisitorial process. So beyond this, of course, where there would be need for follow-up, whether it be through criminal investigation or otherwise, do you think that that would find expression, whether there would be opportunity and that sort of forensic polygraphing will actually be done?
Hopefully, because the whole nation would agree with me. Forensic polygraphing will make a real statement. Although it's not allowed in court, it shows the finger in correct direction, and it shows your openness and attitude. But further investigations is very important. You know, there's truth extraction, proper interrogation. As I've said, there's so many ways and avenues to take all this information that is presented in the Madlanga Commission to further investigate it, but you need expert policemen. You cannot use a painter to fix a diesel engine. You need real expert policemen with a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge.
Who are also not invested one way or another in the outcome of what is presented here.
Yeah, it's very difficult because there are so many of these policemen that know each other. So many of them are in the same political party, and so many of them might be scared. Remember, any policeman now that stands out is a target. We see in the political killings, look how that hasn't changed, it's escalated. There's 13 already this year. So it hasn't stopped. The Madlanga Commission, my concern now is, it's dealing with certain things, but it's not making a real difference. It's made the criminals more aware of how they should operate now, and they're more careful. But the corruption in the police, in my opinion, and in the government, is still about 80%. Remember, corruption is not necessarily taking money. It's when you don't do your job.
80% is a huge number. People might say, but Mike, where did you get that number from? How could you confidently state that it would be that, pervasive, as it were?
Yeah, it's shocking words, but I have the, how shall I say, the strength to say it, because we've been doing this for 40 years and we've been seeing the escalation in corruption, and we've seen where we work with the police on a daily basis. There's nothing wrong with a good policeman that has a good attitude and he wants to. But if he's in the job and he cannot protect and serve, if he doesn't know what fraud is, if he doesn't know what human trafficking is, crimes against women and children this month, if he's at the station and he turns away and doesn't even want to help you, what is that? That is corruption. Remember, that's misrepresentation, theft and fraud, which means you are saying you're something which you are not. So you say you're a painter, but actually you're a diesel mechanic.
The problem with that is that it then suggests that there are very few law enforcement officers who are actually doing their job.
Well, look, IDAC, I fully supported and still support them. But look how easily it was tainted. Now, you would think if you take the best of the best of the best police, within a few months, there was mistakes made, familiarity, separate things handled in specific ways in IDAC. How is that possible? So you have specialized units and another specialized unit and a higher and then you have the highest of the highest that deals with the information that the Madlanga Commission presents. And then still, because it's fall under corruption, there's still corruption. So there is very few extreme expert policemen. And unfortunately, this is what everybody always has felt. There's an influence always, whether you politically affiliated with those that you're investigating, whether this is a form of fear, a form of intimidation. What's going to happen if I handle this man this way and that man that way? We've seen it amongst the generals and each other and the police all along we've seen it. And it's very difficult to get a policeman that is totally neutral, that really protects and serves, and will take anybody down in a zero-tolerance manner.
So how does the country fix it? Because in order to fix the country, you need to fix law enforcement, and starting with the police. If the problem is as bad as you say it is, how do we start fixing it?
You know it's that bad. You can't say it, but I can. The public knows it's that bad, and they say it. And I speak on behalf of the public. The problem starts with the president. The very president of our country has to really put his foot down. First of all, he has to come clean about the $580,000. He has to. He has to set the example. As a matter of fact, he should also be interrogated by the Madlanga Commission. He has to go through what everybody else goes through. Secondly, the ANC government has shown itself that it's not effective. Thirdly, you cannot have a government that is running the authorities. You have to have police that is not scared of the government. How are we going to get that? It's very difficult. Is it fixable? I'm straightforward. I say by the grace of God only. But we rely on the people. They must vote correctly. But this government is presently not working unless they completely, totally change. Let's be very honest. Who trusts the government or the police today?
People will answer that question for themselves, whether they do. But and just coming back to some of the evidence here, and Fadiel Adams in particular, and as I said, a bit of a torrid time last week for him. One of the questions that was put to him, where his memory seemed a bit hazy as well, was how he got to the Orlando police station. So he, of course, invoked General Andre Lincoln, who is, of course, now late. He says he's the person who told him that his dockets had disappeared in Cape Town. He was the person who referred him to Joburg to come and open the cases here. He then chose to do this at Orlando police station, of all police stations. But then, of course, when he is asked about that particular matter, at first he states that he went there directly. He went there by himself. Elvis, the person he was meeting, was waiting there for him, but later on admits that no, he actually met Elvis prior to that and getting to the police station. So, it's those type of discrepancies that one would imagine you would remember little details like that.
Well, he presents himself obviously as a talker, and he thinks he's clever, but he has actually stepped into it. He has identified himself. The one thing that I so appreciate of all these investigations is that at the end of the day, especially when it's open to the nation for all to see, they identify themselves. The people aren't stupid. They see right through it. The media, everybody, us, we see it. And as I've said, it's a deduction. You can say a lot of things and this and that and the other, but it just doesn't make actually sense. I mean, memory. Why would your memory fail like in certain spots? It's like you taking a conversation and taking certain things out and blanking it. It's deliberate. And it comes to me across as untruthful.
So it's an interesting one, that, and also the fact that, Orlando also brings in once again Brown Mokhotsi, and, his possible involvement once again in that. But I want to park that just for a moment, because I want us to talk to the other matter before we run out of time, which was, of course, the evidence that was heard in the afternoon of Dina Govender. And again, here's someone who comes out and says, following what Len John of IPID had said before this commission, that he felt, that he was being used, if you will, but essentially that there was an attempt to get him to tailor evidence to implicate Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. But with that said, we heard from IPA through Len John that there were these very serious allegations of extrajudicial killings against the unit that Governor belongs to. So what are we to make of that evidence?
Yeah, there's a lot to say there, but the one thing that particularly stands out for me is where it's believed to be, but it's mentioned, I feel like I've been led or influenced, and it usually is. That needs to be, once again, thoroughly investigated and identified, and it can only be really identified by further investigations and forensic polygraphing. I cannot stress more how serious that is. You need to get the absolute facts.
But as you also pointed out yourself earlier, that there are limitations to that.
Yes, there is. But at the end of the day, with everything taken in account, the investigations after, and every name mentioned, every issue mentioned, clearly investigated without any influence or by a specialist, real specialist, that this time is not going to be in any way influenced. There is a possibility to come to the truth.
And then, of course, there's also brought to the fore once again the still suspended Minister of Police, Senzo Mchunu, and again, through even a recording that was played, there seems to be a third party involved. There's no direct communication between Governor and Mchunu. There's this third party through whom that a message or that influence is sought to be brought about. What should be done about that situation where we are now stuck with two ministers of police and the president clearly not willing to do anything at the moment about Minister Senzo Mchunu, whose name has come up severally. But besides that, as we've heard from so many analysts, the president doesn't need a reason. Ministers serve at his behest.
Yeah, he has. I think the president himself is scared. He's a human. I think he's concerned. And,
about what?
Well, the state of the nation. I mean, think for yourself. He's been here 10 years and he didn't make it work. At the end of the day, isn't it so? If a person in my specialist organization, I have specialist investigators, causes trouble over a period of time, and it does come out, who's held responsible? The president at the ultimate is absolutely responsible for every single person in this country. And there's no such thing that he does not know what has been going on since Jackie Celebi's time. He knows. He saw it there starting. There's no way. The president has the most informants in this country than anybody else. Believe me, there are people squeaking and talking and giving me all the Skinner stories of any and everything that's going on in each general's life and how he lives. How is it possible that he has not seen how the lifestyle they live, the Ferraris, the cars? How is it possible? But it's the old story, and we've seen it constantly in House of Cards, in movies and documentaries. When there's politicians and when there's corrupt politicians, there's corrupt authorities, and they eventually take all the cream and the crumbs goes to the poor people.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there with Mike Bolhuis, but remember, the Madlanga Commission, of course, looking into criminality, political interference, and corruption in the criminal justice system. And that speaks to their terms of reference. And, of course, all the evidence that we're hearing are pointing us to very clear examples of what may have happened. But, of course, it remains to be seen what's going to be done about that. We're going to hand it back to studio, and when we come back, Kenny and I will have one final segment of getting into that evidence again that was heard by the Commission on Friday.